G'day bird nerds. Did you know that sometimes studying a common and familiar bird can lead to knowledge that can unlock new management techniques or other knowledge that can help endangered birds? That's what the subject of today's episode will lead to. We're talking about a citizen science project that is studying the red-rump parrot. It's a bonus episode. It's a audio recording of a live stream that I conducted recently with a master's student from the University of Melbourne. Please enjoy. Hello, Rob Ashworth, who is studying the red-rump parrot in southeast Australia. I've done lots and lots of beautiful illustrations today. Not illustrations, sorry. I haven't done any illustrations. I grabbed a whole lot of Creative Commons images of various red-rumps, but I forgot to get the distribution map of the bird. I wanted to show how widely distributed the bird is in Australia. So, would you please tell everyone about your project, where you're enrolled, who's looking after you, and while that's happening, I'm going to pull up the distribution map, all right? Welcome to the Bird Emergency. Yeah. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. Yeah, so I am a Master of Environment student at the University of Melbourne. I'm being supervised by Dr. Kylie Soanes, who some of your listeners and watchers might have already heard of with her work on fairy wrens and powerful owls. And my project is really started with this idea of hollow availability in urban in our cities and what that means for our native wildlife. So we honed in on the red-rump parrot because it was one of those species that's typically assumed to be at least not necessarily absent, but doing relatively poorly in a lot of urban areas. And we wanted to really try and figure out why that is and what can we do to improve the habitat that's available in our city spaces. And we did a couple of different projects. I was running around the city surveying birds throughout lockdown, which was pretty good. And we decided to come up with a citizen science project to help us collect some data on their breeding behavior and the sorts of trees and hollows that they're actually using, because it's not really something that's really present in a lot of the scientific literature, despite the fact that, as you said, they're actually pretty widespread. And they might have been encountered by a lot of your listeners and viewers, at least occasionally, especially as they're going for walks down in their local park or even on local sports fields and things like that are pretty common places that you'll see them popping up. So even though they're definitely present, we wanted to try and figure out why it is that they're not as common as other species.
Okay, I'm back. So there are a couple of different representations, Rob, of how widely distributed they are but it's the southeast corner. Of Australia. And they are really abundant in the areas where they're found. That's my personal experience. And they will live in an area like Melbourne, and certainly near me. My local ones hang out in a fenced-off substation, and that's where I usually see them. And in the median strips on a really busy road, Sunshine Avenue is my really busy road, I often see them there and sometimes in the park across the road from my place. But they're unobtrusive little parrots, about 15 centimetres.
Yeah, about roughly the size of a cockatiel, give or take, I'd say. Oh, there we go. That's a great example of the male.
Yeah, I'm going to cycle through a bunch of them, so we don't really need to speak to each one.
Yeah.
But you did make the point. Actually, let's put this up. Right. Now, they're a difficult bird sometimes because they can look different depending on which angle you see them from.
Yes.
So I'll just pop a few up and you can keep telling us about some of the things that you know and notice about red-rumps.
Yeah.
I'll just let people understand. They're quite often misidentified as well because they are one of the grass parrots, but they're not one of the neophemas. These are the one. They're related closely to the mulga parrot. You can, if you're not familiar with them, you can misidentify the females pretty easily.
Absolutely, yeah. And for anyone tuning in who is guilty of misidentifying them, I have also done the same, particularly with the females and the juveniles. So it's just the males, as you probably can already see, that have that really characteristic and namesake red rump and have that really vibrant plumage. But the females, like a lot of other birds, tend to be much on the duller side, and it's really easy to mistake them for juveniles of other species. I know juvenile eastern rosellas can have similar sorts of color combinations to the female red rumps, and when all you've got is a split second to see them as they're flying past, it's really easy to mis-ID them. So it happens, absolutely, but normally the big giveaway is where you see them. I've found that most of the time when I'm out and about, they'll be doing their grassy parrot thing and feeding on the ground in amongst the grass, as you can see right here. And it's when they're disturbed, they'll fly up into and seek that shelter from nearby shrubs and trees. So just the fact that they're predominantly ground feeding is a really big giveaway when you're actually out and about and trying to figure out, is it a red rump? Is it something else? I can't quite tell. That's usually a big giveaway compared to the other common or closely resembling species.
One of the reasons I picked all these particular pictures, Rob, is that I've always found them to be difficult to find if you haven't flushed them from feeding on the ground or you don't know where a nesting hollow is. Unless they're calling to each other, they can be hard, very difficult to actually see because of their plumage.
And it's funny that you say that. During one of my surveys at Yarra Bend, actually, I was in the middle of a survey, and like you said, it's funny that it's called bird watching sometimes, because so much of bird watching is actually listening for calls. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was just walking and decided to have a quick scan of my binoculars. And I think about 20 meters away, there was probably about 5 of them just happily munching on the grass. And I would not have seen them if I hadn't just angled my binoculars in that exact right way. I would have just walked right past them. So they can absolutely be difficult to spot unless you can hear them. And you'd think that this would be right at the start of my survey period where I'm still getting a feel for what they tend to be doing. No, right at the end. Absolutely at the end. So it was a bit of an embarrassing moment for me at that point.
Yeah, they're so familiar to bird watchers. I think we're really used to seeing them if they're in our neighbourhood. They're often not, though. They tend to be more predominant in the drier areas over the Great Divide. But where I am in the western suburbs, northwestern suburbs, we get them really common. But when I used to live in Richmond, actually, there were piles of them, both at Burnley College, but also at the nearby parks, playing fields and whatnot, and also in behind the playing fields right behind the town hall. I used to see them frequently. But when I lived in eastern Melbourne, I didn't see them much at all. The Rosella's king parrots were more likely to be the parrots you would see. Rob, tell us how the idea for your project came about. And actually, no, let's start with you're doing a master's.
Yeah.
What was your main study area that in your undergrad, and what got you interested in the red-rump?
So my undergrad was in ecology and conservation biology. I'm actually a Queenslander, so I did my undergrad at Griffith up in Brisbane. I moved down to Melbourne sort of start of 2019, just before lockdowns. And I've always loved birds. I've always been fascinated by birds. But when I started chatting to Kylie, my supervisor, about potential projects, it wasn't necessarily with the red rump in mind. I was really interested in hollow conservation, particularly in urban areas. I'd been in reading the literature, I'd noticed these trends and tendencies to state that there's just urban areas are hollow limited, but without having any real data for it. So I thought, hey, is there something here that we could turn into a project? And we talked it over after a little while. And one of the organizations that I'm working quite closely with is the City of Melbourne. And one of their priorities for a lot of their urban conservation work is to improve the habitat of the parks and green spaces within the municipality for a lot of these smaller hollow-dependent species that you don't maybe tend to see quite as much as things like rainbow lorikeets. And so it became this, I guess, great opportunity to contribute to some actual ongoing conservation work, as well as investigating these questions that I'd been mulling over for probably quite a while since my undergrad, when I think about it. Originally, the study species was actually likely we were looking at owls based off as an extension of some of the work that Kylie's done in the past, but trying to find a cryptic apex predator and find them enough to write a master's thesis in about 9 months is a bit risky. So we changed tactics a little bit. And it was probably just because I'd gone for a walk just before one of our meetings and had seen some red-rump along the little local creek track that I often walk along. I think that's probably where the idea sprouted for red-rumps in particular, because realistically, we could have gone down, used rosellas or king parrots or a number of other little grassy parrots. But it was the red-rumps that I think I saw, so that's the one we ran with.
So being a resident of Melbourne now, Rob, were you walking along Gardiner's Creek or Merry Creek to see your red-rumps?
I'm actually out in Sunbury, so it was Blind Creek that flows into Jackson's Creek.
Okay. So you're really familiar with the kind of habitat that I have around me as well.
I am, yeah.
A lot of the really old-style traditional gardens from Sunbury, probably established in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
It was mine of 60s and 70s, really European-style planting. But the red-rumps love the playing fields and the road verges and these western basalt plains wherever we've got some remnant grassland.
For sure.
Or reclaimed grassland or wasteland. So we've got the linear park here running along the transmission line. So there's lots of opportunities for these birds, and it's beautiful to see. Now, tell me, Rob, I'm interested in the methodology of the project. So I've made that easy link, which is birdemergency.com/red-rumps, which will take them to Rumpuary. So people can sign up and participate in the search. It's a Google Doc, is it? So it's
so it's a Google Forms. So we've tried to make it as easy to use as possible. You don't have to have any sort of experience with scientific data collection. There's only 3 questions that are absolutely compulsory to answer to submit an observation, but realistically as many of those questions that you can possibly answer will give us even more data, and more data the better. So it is just a Google Forms. You can use it on your phone or your tablet or other personal device, and come straight to us and we can take a look at all of your great observations.
One of the things I really liked about what you're asking is you're not asking people to have actually seen it today, to be able to say they're at it now. If somebody at any period of time knows of a hollow, and even if it's gone now, if the tree has been removed, but if you know that red-rumps used to nest across the road, blah, 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 where they've now built some flats or something, that's important information that you're after as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What we're trying to get is this snapshot. It's almost like painting a picture for what a good hollow for a red-rump parrot looks like. We're not trying to map every hollow for this particular breeding season. It's more about trying to figure out generally what sort of hollows they're using. Are they only using native trees? Exotic trees just as valuable in areas where there are no large native trees? Are they using nest boxes and artificial hollows successfully, or any other artificial structure? I remember one in particular observation I had when we ran this survey back in February was someone had an observation of red-rumps nesting in a wooden, like a power line, in the wooden cross of a power line. And so it was this really great insight to say, oh, actually, red-rumps are pretty flexible. What else are they using? And so it doesn't really matter if it's not been this season. And that's another reason why we didn't want to have all of those extra questions to be absolutely compulsory, because it's hard to remember exactly how big the tree was or how many other hollows were in the tree. If you were honing in on your memory for just the nesting red-rump, that's still important information because it's a hollow that they were using, hopefully successfully. So yeah, absolutely, that's still a really valuable piece of information.
Apart from the information that's submitted by residents, visitors, whoever, are you also harvesting databases like iNaturalist for examples that you've... Yeah.
So I use data from eBird and iNaturalist to form the basis for my own field surveys. So I did a series of bird surveys throughout different parks around Melbourne and came up with to produce occupancy models to essentially figure out where red-rumps were and where they were not. And those surveys and those locations were chosen based off that historic data collection. So all of those participants who had submitted sightings of red-rump parrots through iNaturalist and those other databases, they formed the basis of my data collection as well. So that was really important. We wanted to make sure that we were choosing locations where there were plenty of historic records, as well as trying to find locations where there weren't really many at all, because that's still just as important. If the red-rumps aren't turning up very frequently in this park, we want to know why, because we want to be able to hone in on exactly why that is and how we can improve the habitat. So all of those historic observations were really important for my study.
Would it have been possible for you to get enough data for your project without running the citizen science survey? Could you have found enough material from eBird and iNaturalist and just your own actual surveys to have done the project?
I think there's probably going to have been a lot of really valuable information that we could have gathered from eBird. And that's reminding me that I need to go back through for this survey period and do a little bit more trolling. I think the big positive for running a citizen science project like this is also a really valuable way of engaging with the community and fostering these connections to nature and giving people an opportunity to learn about a species that, as potentially maybe not as avid a birder or just someone who enjoys walking down a park, they might be able to learn a little bit more about this species and even gain a sense of ownership or connectedness to it. So I think from that perspective, the citizen science project has been a really valuable opportunity to just communicate some science.
How many records did you get submitted in the first survey period, Rob?
50.
That's a good lot. And how's it going for this one?
So this one we've only just sent out literally on Friday, actually. So it's still very early days. I think there might have been one or two trickle through, but we're still in that early stage process of making sure as many people have heard about it as possible. So hopefully in the coming weeks, we will have ramped up some extra surveys and some extra observations to just figure out what they're doing this year.
There you go, Bird Nerd Army. If you're active on the socials, get out there and share it. You can do the easy link, thebirdemergency.com/red-rumps, so you don't have to remember how to do the spelling or anything. And that will really help Rob out, just getting the awareness going. So even if you're not a birder, people who are, just share it, pump it up. How long Are you expecting to get information popped in, Rob, for this survey period?
So at the moment, we're tentatively working with about the 31st of October, about a month and a bit, just to give people time to, one, have heard of that we're doing it, because that's always a big bonus if they actually know it's on, but also to see them popping up. It might not necessarily be something that people see on a daily basis. So we want to make sure people have got enough time to, if they think they're around, to actually have found them and respond to the survey. If last time I think we had it open for about 2 months. So I guess it depends on how many responses we're getting in and what the timing of that is. There's absolutely, and even if it gets to past into November, we're still absolutely keen to hear about any of your observations. If there's any last minute ones to be added on, we're more than happy to hear about those as well.
So what's your time frame to complete your master's work?
So my thesis is actually already in.
This is a continuation of the work you've already done.
Yes. So this will be the first round was, you could think of it as more of a preliminary or a pilot study, and in conjunction with the work that I did on figuring out their occupancy. So that formed my thesis. At the moment, this data, we're trying to basically strengthen the argument and get as much data as possible, and hopefully, with a bit of luck, publish our findings within the coming months. We don't necessarily have a particular time frame to have that publication in, but that would be the next steps. We're just making sure that we've got a really robust argument and we've collected as much data as we possibly can.
But from a personal point of view, you've submitted your thesis. So does that mean that you're looking to graduate like with the cohort at the end of this year?
Yeah. So I still have a couple of little things to tick off for this semester, but all things going well, it should be I'll be graduating and finishing up masters at the end of the year, which will be very exciting. And
are you then looking to go into a PhD program, or have you got your sights on something different?
It's definitely on the horizon, I think. I've got my eye on it. I don't think it will be a straight away next step. My partner is also doing a PhD, so having 2 PhD candidates in the same house is probably going to be a bit much. So
you'll love 2-minute noodles.
Yeah, I think I've outgrown my days of being able to persist on just 2-minute noodles. So I think earning a little bit of money in the meantime will be nice. So yeah, I guess I'm at the stage where I'm trying to keep my options open. Trying to play the field a bit. What will
actually two questions, because one leads into the other. Which faculty or which school are you in at Melbourne?
So
is it the Institute of Land and Resources, whatever it's called?
Because of my masters that I'm doing, I'm technically enrolled within the Office of Environmental Programs, but my research is actually through the School of Ecosystem and Forest Sciences. So I sit within the Quantitative and Applied Ecology Lab Group with Kylie, and that actually sits within Ceph. So it's a little confusing, because technically I'm enrolled here, but I work here. And so it's very dependent on the actual degree. But a lot of the work that some of the other people in my lab do is really trying to answer some of those big questions in conservation and ecology, especially from a quantitative perspective, which I don't always understand. That's potato. So we've got a really diverse working group, which has been great to draw on so many different perspectives, so much different experiences and knowledge, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, you have to be flexible if you're doing anything in academia, don't you, nowadays?
Absolutely. You get good at Googling things on the fly.
And, Rob, if you're going on to a PhD and whatnot, you're going to be very good at writing grant applications.
Yes. Because of the fact that this is very practical and applied work, it's been a great insight into collaborative work with other organizations. So that's been, again, from a personal perspective, that's been a really great learning opportunity for me that I've gotten outside of the actual research results itself.
Now, I promoted this as being all about citizen science as well.
Yeah.
Because of the time. If you wanted to know about all the other projects, and with the Citizen Science Association of Australia and Michelle Neal, I'm going to do a different stream, probably tomorrow at the same time, to run that. So I'm sorry, but there's just too much to cram in. Michelle and I took for a long time. It's a pre-record, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have taken up all the time. I wanted to get an idea from you, Rob, because you've come down from Brisbane. Were you involved in any of the citizen science projects in Brisbane, or had you been involved in any sort of re-veg work or Friends of a Park or anything like that? Had you come across Hugh Possingham on his daily bird watching, or Daryl Jones checking out the crows?
So Daryl Jones is actually my old lecturer.
Well, that's great. I was hoping we'd be able to tie it in somewhere, because I wanted to give him a plug. The book's out. Stone Curlews on Vulture Street is out, and so is his other book. What is it? Snow Leopards in the Cloud? Or I can't remember the title.
Yes.
That's out too, and Daryl's off doing his book launch tour and going to speak at a international conference. So I was hoping we'd be able to work a plug in. Actually, while we're doing plugs, let's do this one too. I know the green screen mucks it up a bit, but this is the Urban Field Naturalist Project Field Guide to creatures in your neighbourhood. Did a really nice conversation with those guys, those guys and girl, but guys generic as a guy. This is out too, and if you're interested in citizen science projects, you're interested in noticing what's all around you in your neighbourhood, which is really what your project is about, Rob, because you've got to be pretty keen and aware. Notice, as I've tagged this one, the delicate,
or lucky.
Actually, that's how you're typically going to see the red-rump.
Yep.
That's typically how you're going to see it when you're out walking the dog or whatever. But you have to be one of those people who is aware and attuned to what's going on around you to see it. They're not noisy like the lorikeets.
No.
And the wattle birds.
No.
They will not draw attention to themselves, and it's going to be a flush of a few birds flying off to not a tall tree either. They'll often go to power lines and survey the area. Hopefully you'll walk past and then they'll just go straight back to where they were.
Yeah. And sometimes you get within 2 meters and they still haven't flown away and you still haven't noticed them. That's happened to me a few times as well.
Rob, we're probably into about the 4th year that I've noticed my group around my place, and I think it's a couple of pairs. I think it's actually 3 pairs that come together before they're actually actively nesting, and then they split up. And then I'll see a pair and maybe 3 offspring after they've come out of the hollows. I've never found any nests. They are very good at not being very conspicuous around here. I haven't found any nests.
Yeah.
But I do see the offspring and I do see the pairs. Just before they disperse, so we're talking after Christmas, when they kind of disappear from here. It's later than Christmas. It's probably after Easter, if I think about it. That
it depends a lot on the weather, really. The last couple of years, this is the 3rd La Nina cycle that we're going to go through. So all of this extra summer rain, you'll have noticed that they're probably hanging on longer than they would when it's not raining. So they're very weather dependent.
Yeah, and I have noticed up to 15, 16 birds in one group, but it's usually much smaller than that in my area. But then people I know who live in central West New South Wales tell me that they see quite large flocks.
Yes.
So
I had someone in Canberra send me a video where there was around 50 of them.
Yeah.
And I was insanely jealous.
Well, I don't think we really know what they do.
Yeah.
I don't think we can be confident about it. And I think it's locality dependent. I really do.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because one of the other reasons why we went with red-rumps is because they're actually relatively understudied. There's not many in the scientific literature. They're not really studied extensively. They might have been seen in a general bird survey or mentioned a couple of times, but there's not a whole lot of research that's been done on them. So you're absolutely right. There's probably a lot about their behavior and their ecology and how that varies throughout the distribution that we just don't really know at the moment, because no one's really looked into it. And so that was another big bonus for picking red-rumps.
I wonder, Rob, you probably will find this out if you're able to make your study into a more longitudinal one. with maybe more years and then people joining in the survey from more locations. But I wonder whether they're an opportunist breeder as much as being regulated by pretty strict timelines.
Yeah, I think they probably are. From the snapshot that the snapshot that I've seen so far from people's observations, I think they are definitely quite opportunistic. I was one of the respondents to the survey in February, lives down around the Geelong way, and is part of a community organisation that actually sets up nest boxes. And he noticed that in last summer he was having the same pairs come back a second time to try and breed, and I think there was one instance where he noticed them coming back a third time. So I think, yes, they might have this window, but if conditions are right outside of that, I think there's a good chance that they're more than happy to at least attempt to breed again.
I'm pretty sure that not last season, but the season before, when I noticed quite large groups around me, I reckon it was the first clutch of offspring and the second clutch, because I noticed there were some that were doing the Rosella thing where they were patchy and blotchy and some that were really dull. So I think that was the case. I'm lucky because they feed where I go and catch the bus to go to the supermarket. And
great.
I head out, and I go and do that a couple of times a week, 3 times a week. And during the lockdown, I was going every day just to get out of it.
Sure.
So I would go, because then if you get stopped, what are you doing? Oh, it's essential. I have to go and get food. But yeah, I got to go and catch and in the same location, I would generally see red-rumps, lorikeets, often 2 types, masked lapwings, crested pigeons, and the magpies. And magpie larks, and a raven nesting in a tree in the median strip on Sunshine Avenue, actually off the median strip, but right next to it, and two trees down, wattlebirds nesting. So it was this little, on one of the busiest roads in Melbourne, less than I can see the ring road on-ramp and off-ramp. I can see it from where I stand at the bus. So really busy place, but all these birds breeding and all the conflict, the territorial conflict.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's also a spot where I regularly see the Australian hobby on its route, because nearby there are 2 pigeon breeders. They're homing pigeons out. So
no wonder there's a hobby.
It's just a great spot. And the introduced birds are there, but crested pigeons as well using the spot. And I've seen peregrines frequently over about 10 years, maybe half a dozen sightings as well. Yeah,
and that's such a really great example of how important an urban area that a lot of people will just discount as being useless or not very good for biodiversity. There's actually still a huge amount of biodiversity that's there. And that's, one of the other things we're trying to show with this sort of work is it's not just a bunch of pigeons or a couple of seagulls. There's actually a huge diversity of fauna that are sharing our spaces with and can benefit from some extra conservation attention.
Definitely. Rob, the best thing that I ever did, being somebody who I studied horticulture, I notice plants. I've always been noticing plants as well as birds through my childhood, insects. So I'm a noticer. Best thing I ever did was get rid of my car about coming on to 6 years ago now, because I actually notice what's in my neighbourhood and what's everywhere I go. Yeah. Even places that I have frequently driven past for 20 years, 25 years. Yeah. I used to live in Brisbane, Rob. And I used
nice.
I'm wondering, were you a south side or north side?
Yep.
Okay.
I grew up in Loganholme.
Okay. I was in East Brisbane, right near Stones Corner.
Very nice.
So, I was down there. My street went down to Stones Corner, and that oval at Cooperoo Footy Club were training on was just down there. But I had a car when I lived in Brisbane. I actually had a 4-wheel drive when I lived in Brisbane. I didn't notice diddly squat because I was a Brisbane, if you're driving around, especially on the south side there, Woolabber, and then the road down to the Gold Coast, or you're on a freeway if you're going over the north side.
Yeah. So it's hard to notice things.
So I didn't see hardly anything. If I ever go back, I will be going as a pedestrian, and I reckon I'll have a much richer experience.
Yeah, probably one of the best things for my own curiosity was the campus that I did my undergrad in. So for those of you...
Were you at Nathan?
I was at Nathan. I was smack bang in the middle of Toohey Forest. And my friends and I were the nerds running around intently staring at beetles or butterflies or other random little bits and pieces that had made its way out of the forest. I remember walking to my car and getting distracted for 10 minutes because a group of fairy wrens had flitted across the path. It was a pretty great spot to go to uni, and there's a lot there, considering it's completely surrounded by suburbia.
Yeah, that's the Nathan campus of Griffith Uni.
Yep.
For those who aren't aware of Brisbane, it's on the south side, and it's just off the main road down to the Gold Coast, but it's up on a hill, and it's a bit like, from a Melbourne point of view, it's a little bit like La Trobe Uni in that there is a wildlife reserve basically attached to the campus, or that the campus is within. So it's a hot spot for sure. Yeah. Really nice campus. And it's what's the oval or the playing field that people will know that was part of the campus? It used to, one of the rugby league teams played there for a while, or rugby union teams.
Yes, I should know this. Anyway, I can't remember.
Anyway, it's not Suncorp. It's not Suncorp Stadium. So if you're a sports person and trying to think of where it is, it's the other place that isn't the Gabba and isn't Suncorp Stadium, where they were playing professional sport. And I think there was a Institute of Sport, or one of the athletics institutes was based there for a while.
Back in the 90s. Think if I remember correctly, I can't remember if it was Queen or maybe not Queen. Someone big performed there.
Yeah. Actually, the Commonwealth Games had all their stuff based there years ago. That's what that's what it was too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. There's the
hive of activity.
On where it was. Sorry for getting so into it, but I really liked it when I lived in Brisbane, but God, the humidity was outstanding.
Yeah, I don't miss the humidity at all.
Yeah.
No.
Did you... Now, we got sidetracked because I brought up Daryl Jones, and Daryl big on noticing what's going on around you and the urban field nats. So have you been participating in any of the other birdie citizen science projects like Superb City Wrens?
Yeah.
Which is one of Kylie's projects with the City of Melbourne, or Big City Birds, which is John Martin's project with bin chickens and brush turkeys and cockatoos.
So a couple of my sites were actually the same areas of the Superb City Wrens project. So every time I recorded fairy wrens, because I was recording everything. Yeah. Because, why not? So all of my fairy wren sightings went into Superb City Wren. Obviously a big fan of the backyard bird count as well, which will be coming up soon. BirdLife Australia's nationwide citizen science bird count.
Which, of course, Holly will be talking about. And I think just setting a date for Tegan to come again, Tegan Douglas. I generally get Tegan to talk about the bird count. Where We're Wedgie in Tasmania, of course, with Claire and the Nature Trackers group.
I've also...
really regular.
Yeah. A lot of the ones that I tend to do, they're not quite formal projects. They're in the sense that it's predominantly fellow students who just need some help with some data collection. There's, as I know full well, the struggle of trying to balance an entire study and do everything else. Yeah, I try to lend a hand wherever I can with that. And it's also just fun to go out and see some more cool things that you might not necessarily have been able to see otherwise.
I'll just pop that one up there, thebirdemergency.com/birds in backyards. You can always do your backyard bird survey. Yep. You don't have to wait for the Aussie bird count, the big one that happens over Bird Week. You can do your Birds in Backyard survey anytime you like.
Absolutely. There's also a great initiative called Gardens for Wildlife, which I would thoroughly recommend people check out if they haven't heard of it already, because there's some really great experiences and stories and resources for how to help biodiversity just in your own backyard as well.
Hey, Rob, I didn't pay you to say something like that, did I?
I don't think so.
So would you like a scoop? Hey, dear viewer, dear listener, dear watcher, here's a scoop. I've done over the last couple of years now with Holly and with Mick Callan and Dan Fuller and a lot of people, we've been talking about improving biodiversity, habitat in your gardens for wildlife.
Yeah.
And they've been really popular. And I didn't want to continually clog up the bird stuff with the plant stuff. So, Habitat Gardening with Grant is about to launch on a new YouTube channel using my horticulture skills. And I don't know why these aren't all popping up so easily. So, there's plants and then there's birds and plants and there's plants that are good to grow in your garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm having trouble with these today. So, thanks for the opportunity to plug that. So
you're more than welcome.
Crazy. Yeah. I'm actually making all the videos and whatnot, but there'll be a regular couple of live streams a week for that, and that'll be based on question and answer and solving problems. But yeah, that's one of my passions. Always has been.
Yeah.
Re-veg, whether it's on a large scale, broad scale.
Yeah.
We talked about Daryl Jones reconnecting fragmented habitats, giving birds and animals, insects, critters, frogs and lizards, an opportunity to get from one place to another. So, I think it's all meshes nicely. And it meshes nicely with what we're talking about today is people can use their phones to collect the data, log into Rumpuary or wherever, Superb City, Rands, Big City Birds. Use
Pollinator Count is also a good one.
That's right. iNaturalist, eBird, Nature Trackers if you're in Tasmania. Now, there are so many now to be part of. And when I present Michelle stuff from the CitSci Citizen Science Org, there is fungi, insects, mosquitoes, and all this stuff assists someone's research like Rob. And when Rob has moved on and is doing other things, there's going to be a new Rob doing stuff. And they use this data. It's useful. And that's why I'm so glad to talk about it, happy to talk about it and to promote it, because one of the things with academic research is that it often gets locked behind a paywall. Yeah. It gets published and then it disappears to people like want to talk about it and want to share it, and for people like my neighbours and whatnot who are using parks and walkways and riding around and going to Royal Park or out to Gels Park or out to Toondah Harbour and looking at shorebirds. I think it's great that it gets into citizen science, publicly available databases, and then it gets used and smart decisions can get made based on the data that's out there.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive help. So we created Red-rumpuary because it wasn't physically possible for me to get out in the middle of lockdowns. Yeah, and it was and it means
not
that
even lockdown. How do you get out to Orange and Bathurst and Tibooburra and Court and
exactly? And that's really important. We want to know, because otherwise it's interesting to know what they're doing in Melbourne, but otherwise there's so much extra that we're missing. And even if I could get out there, who knows if I'm going to get there at the right time, or if they're going to turn up the day after I leave or something like that. So drawing on this pool of local knowledge and experience and connecting that to science has been really enjoyable for me.
Yeah. Look, I love the project because I love the bird, and I'm really glad to see that there's some effort into learning about them and understanding them. Now, we've skipped over the data that you're collecting is hollows, right?
Yes.
So we've been a bit broad scale in our discussion of the Red-rump. So have you been able to draw any inferences from what you know already, Rob, about what they prefer? And while we're talking, I'll just put some of these up again of what some examples just from the couple of photos that I was looking at this morning. They do seem, that's your stock standard hollow that everyone expects to look like. But they're a bit like pardalotes, aren't they, in that they'll adapt.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we saw that popping up in the responses in the survey that we put out in February, especially when it came to urban areas. So you were still dominated by hollow in eucalypt, so gum trees, especially as a species that likes being close to waterways. Red gums were very common, but they use a fairly high proportion of non-native trees as well. In Melbourne, there was quite a few reports of them using English elms and using them actually in essentially consecutive years, invasive willows, cypress, and
Shyness molla, the peppercorn tree.
Yeah, I didn't get a response for that tree, for that species in my survey, but I suspect that they absolutely would, because these trees naturally produce hollows. And that's what really struck me about reading the literature. Cities have all of these non-native trees. And for places like Melbourne, Melbourne is famous for elms. And elms are a species that naturally produce hollows that are used by wildlife in their native distributions. But it's not really talked about in the literature here.
I think the reason for that, Rob, would be, my assumption for that would be that up until the last 10 years or so, most of the elms have not been senescing. They haven't been old enough for a significant number of hollows. But now all these really mature trees that have dropped branches and have been pruned badly 40 years ago have now got hollows that have rotted out. So I think for that sort of period of 60s, 70s, 80s, there weren't that many hollows, but now
potentially not. Yeah. And that's what's the research has been based off. But I mean, just by walking through places like Faulkner Park, King's Domain, all of those, the Botanic Gardens, you can see. I've seen single elms with up to 10 different hollows in them. And so even though the retention of old hollow-bearing native trees is still really important for making sure that biodiversity can persist in urban areas, it's hard to do that in the locations where there aren't any big old native trees to protect. And so perhaps these non-native trees are helping, or maybe not helping because that's anthropomorphizing, but allowing species to persist even though there aren't those big old ukes. And that has some really important implications for conservation. There's a lot of work being done on hollow programs, installing nest boxes and chainsaw hollows, and that's really important work, but it's also really expensive. It's labor intensive. It takes a long time, and there's no real guarantees that the target species that you're wanting to attract or to conserve are going to be the ones that use the hollows. So if things in an area where there's lots of hollow-bearing elms, if those elms are providing the hollow resource, perhaps the conservation effort and the money might be better, more effectively spent in another area, like revegetation or like improving connectivity.
Or a portion of that money that would have been spent in building and providing and maintaining artificial hollows can be used to exclude from using those hollows the species that are invasive and that
absolutely
taking them up. So maybe using some of the knowledge that guys like Mick Callan have found out about the sizes of entries and what they preclude, well, then to actually just put a block on a hollow to stop a brush-tailed possums or something, if that's what you're wanting to do, to stop them getting in, or to stop your lorikeets. I don't know. I haven't spoken to them recently, but whether or not you can restrict rainbow lorikeets from entering but still allow the red-rumps in, I'm thinking you probably can.
Yeah, and that's not... We don't have the answers for that just yet either. And it's going to be very species. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the next. That's what's emerging in hollow conservation as a field, as a topic. It's there's complications with installing hollows and managing hollows, whether they're natural or artificial. And so it's about trying to maximize the benefits with the limitations that we've got. And so that's essentially what my research is trying to do, trying to help managers more effectively conserve the species that they're actually trying to conserve, as opposed to just making more homes for rainbow lorikeets. I love rainbow lorikeets, but there's enough of them.
Sometimes the thing we have to think about is it's great that rainbow lorikeets are all over the place and that the international tourists go bonkers when they see it because they're such a beautiful bird.
Oh, yeah.
But I can remember coming into the city of Melbourne in the 1970s and 80s, 90s, and they were not common. Sulphur-crested cockatoos were not seen in the city.
Yeah.
So we've provided an environment that they can exploit, but they are competing for hollows for other birds that are not as boisterous and rambunctious, pugnacious and aggressive.
Absolutely.
So that means they're all being pushed out. So these are all things that we're learning, and citizen science entries in all of the different forms, iNaturalist, the Aussie Bird Count, BirdLife Australia survey, superb city birds, big city birds, rump. All of these repositories of data help the town planners, the conservation officers, and environment ministers, people like that, make decisions because they always want show me the evidence. Show me the data.
Yeah,
it's great. Rob, what people have got maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months to get it together. Any hollow, any time that you've seen a red-rumped parrot using, report it at Rumpuary. And it's too hard to write the whole Wix one out, so thebirdemergency.com/Rumpuary. And not Rumpuary, birdemergency.com/Red-rumps. So you don't have to work out how to spell it. Also, when we've finished up with this show, the page for this episode with more descriptions will be thebirdemergency.com/Rob Ashworth. That'll be the easy way to find it. So you can go and have a look. I'll have summarised the project and a bit more of the information about red-rumps around the country and links to some other great citizen science projects as well. Rob, where can people find you? I know you're on Twitter and I know you're on Instagram. You're Rob Ashworth on Twitter, I believe.
Rob
D. Ashworth, are you?
Yeah, I think that's my handle. Yeah.
I'll link to that. But your Instagram one is hard because there's lots of Rob Ashworths on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you're like /67 or something or
97. It'll be. Yeah. Otherwise,
are you doing Facebook groups or anything like that? Are you active in any of those?
So I actually have been. Just this morning, I've been posting in a couple of community Facebook groups. If you are involved with a community Facebook group that I haven't posted in and you think there would be members who would like to get involved or who would be interested, please feel free to message me on Twitter or email. My email address is on the actual link to the Red-rumpuary site. My email address is there. Please feel free to send me an email as well. If you're not on the socials and are having trouble accessing the app for any reason, you're more than welcome to send me the details of your observations in any format, and I can put it through the survey for you. I'm more than happy to do that.
And Rob, we'll make it easy too. On the page which is hosting this video and this information on the Bird Emergency, which will be Rob Ashworth, the Bird Emergency /Rob Ashworth, you can leave a comment just there, right there. Leave a comment and I'll make sure it gets to Rob. So if there's something you want to get to Rob, that's easy. If you're feeling a bit lazy, you can just do that too. So
any and all info is really, really appreciated. So feel free to get in touch in any way.
And by all, that's even if you seem to remember that you had some red-rumps that were nesting on your grandfather's farm at Broadford or something in 1970, whatever, that's going to be useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're able to categorise information as being first-hand /second-hand /third-hand, aren't you? So you can, it's just to fill in a map, an overall picture of where the birds did occur and where they were breeding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. It's been great to talk to you. Apologies if you were coming looking for Michelle Neal, but that's going to be a separate stream, which will probably be tomorrow, but you can always get all the information about when the streams are coming at thebirdemergency.com/live, or I'm most active on Twitter at birdemergency. Anything else you want to mention before we wind her up, Rob?
Oh, look, I think we've pretty much covered everything, short of rambling on about how much I love red-rumps.
Well, just so that I can easily cut this bit out. Are you maintaining a list when your own personal bird watching list, your Twitcher list?
I have multiple different lists from multiple different surveys. I am yet to compile it all into one single list, and I really need to get onto that. It just hasn't. It's been one of those things where I've never found the time to actually sit down and figure out everything that I've seen. I've got like a big Excel spreadsheet of all of the birds that I saw through my own surveys. Yeah. But yeah, I'm yet to develop that into a proper list.
Rob, would you be interested? I'm starting a thing on Sundays, or that I play on Sundays anyway. We may not do all the interviews on a Sunday, but I want it to be a share your list Sunday. That might be an interesting thing to talk about, all the different kind of listing that you've been doing, the different surveys you've been doing. Would you be interested in jumping on and doing that?
Yeah, sure, because I work in consulting as well. So the kinds of surveys that we do in consulting are different to the ones that we do in...
different purposes. Yeah. That would be an interesting thing to talk about. So if you're into it, I'll send you an invite for that. I'm keen to get that one going while all the birds are breeding, and it's a really good time to be talking about what you're seeing and what you're listing.
Yeah, great. Yeah, for sure.
We'll do that. I'll probably leave that in the video for the live stream, but it'll come out of the podcast. We'll get rid of that. Thanks, mate. It's been great to meet you. I'm looking forward to seeing your first seen and heard observations, Rob. Need to get you trained for the first. I'm trying to get people to be aware of what's going on very early in the morning rather than just what they see at 10 o'clock while they're down doing what they do.
I'm not going to lie. Some days it takes a while to get my brain moving after coffee. Although this morning it was my duck screaming very loudly to be let out. So that was my first herd.
So what have you got? An Indian runner? Have you got a mallard cross, Rouen?
They're call ducks.
Campbell?
Two call ducks. Call ducks?
I don't know what a call duck is. What's a call duck?
Apparently they were used to call out...
Are they what? Oh, hang on. So they're call ducks as in they call in the wild ducks. So they're a...
Yeah.
So they're a mallard /
probably
black duck cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're a Pacific black duck looking kind of duck, are they?
Yeah, they're not the white ones that Google will spit out at you.
I will. I might even throw it in just on the page just for a bit of fun that we talked about it. I used to have ducks when I was a kid, but they were mostly pecans and muscovies and the mallardy kind of things. We had Rouens and
We got them because a friend of ours was a vet nurse and he had a Pacific black duck chick surrendered because it had gotten lost somehow, and he made the mistake of showing it to us, and then it never left our house. So we had to get ducks for it to be friends with, to keep it company, and then it grew up and flew away, and then we were left with the two. The domestic ducks, and so here we are.
Cool. Ducks are good pets unless you got a lot of concrete in your backyard.
Yeah, I'm a gardener as well. Like I was in horticulture for a number of years, so they are my pest control system in my backyard.
Yep. They love a snail, no doubt about it.
They do. They love a snail.
Oh, good. If we do a Sunday, Rob, we'll have a lot to talk about, just horticulture and gardens and sustainable gardens. And
sure.
That probably means you're into appropriate irrigation and all the kind of things that exercise my mind all the time.
Yeah.
Mulching correctly, saving money when you're in the garden, all those kind of things. Well, great. There we go. And hello, Twitch. You're a little bit late today, Twitch. We're just finishing up. Here's an opportunity if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. There we go. I'll just give you that little bit of time before we pull up stumps. Actually, Rob, tell us. We're just shooting the shit, as I say. What were you doing in horticulture? Did you study horticulture before you went into
college? So I worked in retail nurseries for 8.5 years. So my first job was actually the nursery just down the end of my street. And
Give them a plug, because Brisbane's got a couple of really good nurseries.
Yeah, so they're actually closed down now, but I started at Plants Plus on Bryant's Road, right next to Nielsen's Native Nursery, though.
Yeah.
That's still there.
I was wondering if it was Nielsen's. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, so I was actually the nursery right next door. It's no longer a nursery now, but Nielsen's is a great spot for picking up some native plants in the Brisbane area if you're looking for one. But yeah, I was in nurseries, and it was my part-time job while I was at school, finishing off school, and then through uni. And then I was still working in the industry a little bit after I moved down, up until actually the start of the year, when I started to transition into the ecology space a bit more. Yeah, that's where my background comes from, in Hort.
Was it a big decision to leave Brisbane?
Oh, yeah. I think any decision to move cities is a big decision, but my partner already lived in Melbourne and is from Melbourne, so I moved down.
That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I only moved to Brisbane because two of my friends moved up. They were nurses and moved to take up work at Princess Alexandra. And and I went up to visit them, and I had such a good time, and I managed to find a place that was available to share a house.
Yeah.
I just met this person who was involved in roofing, funnily enough, and his place they were on Vulture, actually living on a place in Vulture Street, and I managed to find a place just off Stanley Street, going down to Stones Corner.
Okay.
So I thought,
nice area.
I'll be close to my friends, and I had another friend who lived on the north side. So not much happening in Melbourne for me. I'll come up and do something new. Yeah, great. But it is a big thing to...
Yeah, for sure.
To have to learn all about a new city. And
it took some time, especially with lockdowns, but you get there.
And I'm glad you're living right out of town too, because people tend to think, I've got to go and live in Carlton or Fitzroy or St Kilda or whatever, but... There's a lot to be said in living in a place like Sunbury or Gisborne or Kyneton even, or whatever, as long as you can get to where you need to go.
Yeah. There's definitely some days where it's, I wish I was a little bit closer just for the convenience, but there's just some nice places to walk around Sunbury. So
you're only three train stops from me, Rob. So.
Yeah, we're not too far at all.
That's right. Actually, it might only be two. No, it's 4 train stops from me, I thought.
Okay. Yeah, barely anything.
Yeah.
It's not a bad area, especially if you're just wanting a quiet day out looking for birds. There's usually plenty around.
Oh, yeah.
Which is nice.
I'm a bit jealous of you because you've got that. You do have those grasslands that are not really weed infested.
And the gangs will fly over every year as well.
Are you getting gangs? I haven't seen gangs here. We get the yellow-tailed blacks occasionally, and I've got a big thicket of she oaks in my park, in the corner of my park, but no, I haven't seen the gangs here.
Yeah, it's a bit late for them now, but pretty much every winter you can at least hear them flying overhead, and there's been a couple of times where they've just landed in the street trees out the front of our house. We've gotten the yellowtails flying over a lot recently as well. Not as many this year, but this year we had what can only be described as a small army of little corellas that took up residence in Sunbury.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the little corellas that go to your place are the same flock that hang out at water gardens and come here as well. And when they're getting together before they go and roost in the evenings, that flock can be 300 or 400 strong at
Yeah, they took up residence at the train station. There's quite a few eucalyptus sideroxylons that were in full flower, and they went absolutely nuts, and it made me so happy. The ground was littered with branches and flowers and nuts, but it was great. They're so good to watch.
But, Rob, while it's good to see them, when I was a kid in Melbourne, you didn't see little corellas. You certainly didn't see long-billed corellas. You had to go a fair way west in the state, and you certainly had to be north of the Divide to see them. So the fact that they're being seen in Melbourne makes me think that, one, they're very adaptable birds, and they can adapt to vastly different environment. Like, it's much wetter, it's colder, but we've pushed them out of their habitat in northern Australia. And I don't mean northern as in the tropics. I just mean north of the Divide, which is where you would see them and they were common. So we're pushing them out and they're coming in here, which means they're pushing other birds out.
Absolutely. And then you throw in things like climate change, and there'd be so many different reasons why they're popping up more. But I think that's hitting the nail on the head. That's going to be a big one. Yeah,
and so while I can delight in seeing them and watching them, when I was a kid and a teenager and in my 20s, sulphur-crested cockatoos were something you irregularly saw, same as galahs. Where I live, it's beautiful. It's perfect for east gazellas, but we don't have any because the lorikeets have pushed them away. So there's pluses and minuses for all those things, and
absolutely.
But it's ever changing too. Who knows whether in days before settlement they were here regularly, and that when all this area was market gardens, perhaps they were displaced then. Yeah. The information isn't out there for us to know. We just have to read old journals and old historical accounts to work that out. But there we go. You never know. You never know, Rob. Oh, look, we've obviously missed Twitch and Facebook haven't got any questions for us. Thanks, Rob. I won't keep you from your day any longer. Nice to meet you.
No, lovely to meet you as well.
Do sign up to Rumpuary if you have seen any red-rumps in your area. If you haven't, get involved in the Aussie Bird Count or Superb City Birds or any of the other projects that we were mentioning along the way. He's Rob Ashworth. He's a master's student at the University of Melbourne. He's basically done now. He's going on to bigger and better things when he can grant. I'm a bird nerd from thebirdemergency.com. Oh, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's what I forgot to tell you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. See ya. Congratulations for making it all the way to the end. You can go to thebirdemergency.com/Rumpuary and you will find all the photos, the pictures that we've been talking about, and you can sign up for Rob's project, thebirdemergency.com/Red-rumps.